this was a nice job where I actually got to combine a fairly technical approach to the actual phones. These are real existing phones made by Cylon, but they wanted them to create as superheroes. So I've kind of combined the more technical approach in inking the phones to a far more expressive line for the sort of Jack Kirby-esque superhero elements on it. And again, this was created entirely in Illustrator. Does anyone here know the difference between a bitmap image and a vector image? Yeah? I've got a few nods there, right? Anyone not? Right, I'll explain. A bitmap image, such as is created in Photoshop, is basically made up of lots of little dots, which actually make up the image. So you can imagine that the larger you make that image, the bigger the dots become, and the cruder it looks. So I mean, you'll have seen this if you've ever saved a picture off the web and then sort of enlarged it until it hardly looks like anything. Vector images, on the other hand, all the lines, colours, gradients, everything like that, they're all defined as mathematical equations within the program. Basically what this means is that the bigger you make it, it doesn't deteriorate in quality, it still stays just as sharp as the original image you chose. So even though these were created, each one was about A4 size if it was printed out, they could actually be enlarged by the client to the size of a house or something if they really wanted to. And they were still not exactly the same. So I tend to keep a library of symbols. For instance, if I'm doing Spider-Man, the symbol on his chest or the shape of his eye, things like that. And then you can actually cut and paste them in Illustrator without actually having to redo them over and over again and enlarge them and reduce them without the quality actually changing. So that's a huge advantage of inking digitally. The trouble with working digitally is that clients think you can change things at the drop of a hat. This went through maybe 8 revisions. The line work, the colouring. It got to the point where I realised they really didn't know what they wanted, and I actually quit the job because I was just so fed up with it. But even the worst job can teach you something, and in this case it was a colouring style which I haven't used before, which uses much sharper highlights, much more sort of animation style colouring almost. And to do that I actually started using the pen tool in Photoshop to select the areas, whereas before I used the lasso tool, which can look quite shaky when I actually draw it by hand. So I've used that ever since. So even though it's a truly terrible job to do, I actually learned something which I've used ever since doing it. So I'm just briefly going to take you through a page of Benny the Cat that I did for this year's Beano Annual and show you the different steps. Image search. How do I live without image search? It's absolutely amazing. You sort of asked to draw a banana and you realise you don't know what a banana actually looks like. You go on Google image search, you find a picture of a banana and sort of. In this case it was a strip set in the Victorian era, so I would search some urchins, bodices, flying helmets, waiters' uniforms, things like that. I read an interview with Frank Hampson, the guy who used to draw Dan Dare back in the 60s, and he actually used to employ someone just to keep a filing cabinet full of reference material for him. And this guy was basically just employed to sort this stuff out, put it in alphabetical order in different categories and so on. And if I can afford that, then fine. But image search has made a huge difference in the way I work. So, from the script, I just start off with a rough thumbnail of how I think the page is going to look. I actually wrote this script myself, so I pretty much had in mind what the page is going to look like before. So you can see that I've roughed in where the captions and logos and so on are going here before I actually draw it, just to make sure there's enough room. In this case, I messed up the layout of one of the pages. I realised it was going to be really heavy on the dialogue, a lot of panels on the page. And I actually forgot that one panel was in it, so I missed it out. So I just scanned it in, because I knew there was a lot of dialogue on it, I actually put the lettering over the top so that I could figure out how to work around it. And just played around with it digitally in Photoshop, resizing some of the panels and the figures in the panels, and came up with something which worked reasonably well. So this is the layout for another page in the same strip, the thumbnails rather. Again, you can see I've put in where the logo and the basic dialogue going to go. And then I use various different references and tools to actually put the page together. So obviously this is an architectural reference for one of the scenes. I use digital photos myself sometimes just to try and figure out what the page is going to look like. I use screen captures and Intilone in this case from Leeds, who I've used for quite a few years as the model for Katie in the strip. I also sometimes create very basic 3D models. I've never figured out how to render anything or anything like that. But I use these because it helps to visualise, in this case, the sort of steam-powered robot that's in the strip. It helps to visualise it, but it also helps to keep it consistent. So I can actually move around this model and see it from different angles and different perspectives, and keep the robot pretty much looking the same throughout the strip. And my faithful old action man, you can see, has lost his hands because they perished many years ago, because they were gripping hands, so they made them a softer material than the rest of it. So they've gone. But I also use digital photos of, or I used to. I've just got a new mannequin from America, which is much more detailed than Bosch. But yeah, Action Man's helped me out with a few sort of visualisation problems. So Lindsay Lohan ends up on Action Man's body, and as you can see, I've sort of combined that with 3D images of the robot and so on, from which I use that as a basis to produce the finished pencils. These are drawn traditionally just on pencil and paper. I sometimes use blue pencil. I sometimes ink the pencils that are going on maybe bio. This is actually drawn at the same size as the printed page is going to be printed. But then I scan the artwork in, place it into Illustrator, and make it twice as big before I start inking it. I've already put the panels in here. This is a script for next year's video anime. I then start inking it with various different brushes which I've created. So you can see here, for instance, you've got a 1-point brush with a 1-point variation, so it's always going to be quite a thin brush, whereas down the bottom here, you've got a 7-point brush with a 4-point variation. So the minimum thickness is always going to be is 4 points, but as you press hard, you can get quite a nice wobbly brush. I tend to use this for Spider-Man fans, for instance, for doing the outlines of the characters, whereas more delicate work like this, I'll probably use something like the second brush down. These are called calligraphic brushes. And the other basic brush you get in Illustrator is called an art brush, which is just a fixed pattern, which, depending on how much you stretch it out, will actually elongate the pattern or make it thicker. So I have various ones of these that came with the program or that I've created. And I tend to do sort of more mechanical stuff with these brushes, just because it gives it a more organic look to it. But you can combine the brushes in any way you want. So at the top left here, we've got sort of various art brushes, different thicknesses and different variations. But at the bottom, I've used a combination of these textured art brushes and calligraphic brushes to create what's quite a nice texture.